You're watching SIG Today with me, Rory Ashari, and we are still in the middle of a great event called the SOE, State-Owned Enterprise International Conference here in Bali. And we have the great privilege to talk and sit down with the Funds Director of Semen Indonesia Group, Bapak Andriano Husni Panangian. Pak Husni, how are you doing? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
So I'd like to start off with, as a strategic company that covers subsidiaries in the field of cement and non-cement, what is the main strength of SIG, especially after the grouping, under the SOE holding company?
Okay, thank you. So Semen Indonesia Group is the leader in the cement and building material industry in Indonesia. Our market share now in Indonesia is around 48%. And after the acquisitions, big milestone in the acquisitions of our group back in 2019, where we acquired Holcim Indonesia, we strengthened our positioning in the network of the capacities and also logistics across Indonesia. As you know, we are now sitting in a good framework of network in Java, from West Java, Central Java, and East Java, whereby this Java island contributes around 56% of the total market in Indonesia.
Right.
And we also have extensive network also in Sumatra, whereby we have Semen Padang and also our Semen Andalas in Lokma, and our presence also in eastern part of Indonesia in Tonasa in South Sulawesi. This actually contributes to the total capacity of around 52 million ton of capacity. And basically that supports for the total consolidation of the group. As you know, with this consolidation, it also strengthened our economic of scale, whereby number one, in terms of the procurement, we have the economic of scale to bring cost efficiency and optimizations of the procurement system, and also in terms of the logistic and supply chain.
Right.
With the consolidations also, we bring more synergy in terms of coordination, in terms of sales strategy, in terms of how we basically provide the optimum cost to serve across Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that also supports in terms of how we compete in the market and getting a more optimum financing also in terms of our growth further.
So you're the market leader for cement category in Indonesia, and the government is very ambitious in building new infrastructure, let it be it road, bridges, and other infrastructure as well. So how do you keep up with the demand from the Indonesian side, and of course from the regional and also Asia maybe market? How do you keep up with that?
I think in terms of the supply and demand itself, currently we are still in an oversupply situation. Although, as I mentioned to you, in terms of oversupply across Indonesia, we have to look into a particular area where is actually the demand is coming from. In terms of the Java market itself, as the biggest contributor, I think we're pretty much dominant in the Java island. And then in terms of in Sumatra also, with our two presence, we are also pretty much can cover all the demands in Sumatra. And with our presence also of course in eastern part of Indonesia. So I think in terms of fulfilling the demand, I think we are still be able to contribute further, right, in terms of looking at the oversupply situation right now.
What's the biggest challenges, Pak Husni, for cement industry and your subsidiary in doing business in the country?
Okay, so as you know, currently, definitely in terms of the cost push there, because 25% of our cost is actually from the energy. And as you know, the coal price is actually increasing quite dramatically. But again, if you see from our result in the first half, you see that we can basically increase our profitability. Even we can increase our EBITDA margin 0.4%, and even we can book a better earning after tax and a net profit margins around 4.4%. So that means we are able to cope with the situations and manage our costs efficiently. And of course, in particular for the coal, this is actually coming back to our strength as a consolidation and holding company for cement companies in those particular major area. We are able to secure coal in the DMO price. And that's actually by way of doing a more structured collaborations with our suppliers. So we are only dealing with certain big suppliers that we can work together and bring a more win-to-win business cooperations rather than only on a transactional or spot basis.
Okay, how big is your dependence on coal as your power source? Because we're now talking about net zero emission, and each company under the SOE ministry has their own clear agenda in reducing emission. What is your target in reducing emission, and how big is your dependence on coal?
Okay, so again, 25% of our cost is coming from energy and mostly coal. We consume around 6.5 to 6.8 million ton of coal every year. We're using around 4,200 in average GAR, caloric value. And of course, this is actually the main contributor of our CO2 emissions. And we know that this is basically a pain points that we have to tackle in terms of our sustainability. We have a program to reduce further our emission, and we already put that in our sustainability framework, which I will explain to you further. So currently, we produce around 590 kilogram of CO2 cement for our scope 1. And we already committed, and it's actually in our strategy, in our fourth pillar strategy, to reduce this further to below the IEA standard. So this is actually in line with the 2-degree scenario, which is targeting by 2032 to around 515 kilogram of CO2. And then we have a stretch target also to be below 500 kilogram of CO2 per ton of cement products. And we are doing this by 2 ways. Number one, we have a program to increase our thermal substitution rate. So this is actually substituting the coal consumptions that I told you into refuse-derived fuel, alternative fuel.
Right.
So this alternative fuel is actually coming from biomass. We are also now in the program with, especially in our cement Padang, to expand to what we call the Kaliandra plant-based fuel, alternative fuel. So we dry the sticks, and it's actually have the same caloric value amount with coal per ton basis. That's number one. Number two, we are also utilizing the municipal and industrial waste. Yeah, so we work together with a couple of local provincial government to launch a program for utilizing this waste. And then we have to install what we call a feeding facility to process this waste into become refuse-derived fuel. And then we are substituting this for our coal consumption. We have a target to increase this thermal substitution rate up to 20% by 2030. And this is actually one of the program in line towards our target to reduce the emission carbon. Like I said.
Do you think it's ambitious enough to achieve the net zero emission by 2060 set by the government?
Yes, so basically we have 2 milestones. Yeah, number one is up until 2030. That's where we're going to reduce the carbon emissions to the degree that I told you before. And then TSR is one of the program. Number two is by way of reducing our clinker factor. So when you produce cement, there is a clinker substance in the cement, and it's a percentage of it. And if you reduce, and this clinker actually is the substance where it consumes the most of the coal consumptions. And by reducing it, we're reducing also the consumptions of coal. And we are now in the clinker factor of around 68%, and we're we're reducing this further into 61% by 2030. And this is actually what we're doing in parallel with the increase of the TSR. And we're substituting this clinker with a substance what we call fly ash bottom ash, whereby this fly ash bottom ash we get from the waste of the power plant. So for the power plant is also a reduction in the emission, because then the FABA, the fly ash bottom ash, we take as a substitute for the clinker,
Right.
and therefore they don't have to build a warehouse to store this waste. So it's a win-win situations with the power plant provider.
So you mentioned about sustainable framework. Can you elaborate more about your sustainable framework and how will it impact the reduction of emission in the country?
Okay, so that's one of the target that we are already in the program, yeah, to reduce the emission on our scope 1.
Yeah.
We have also the scope 2. The scope 2 is actually related to non-direct activity. So this is where our solar panel program comes into the picture. So we're planning to substitute 25% of our total dependence on the fossil fuel electricity with the solar panel. And we'll work together with some of our co-suppliers, like for example, the PTBA MOU that we did just now is actually related to the solar panel installations in one of our plants. Yeah, and we're going to expand this further to our other plants. Now, our sustainability framework is actually one of the key elements to showcase our commitment towards decarbonization. So in order for us to show our commitment, we are also reprofiling on half of our loan into sustainable linked financing. And in order to do this, we have to create what we call a sustainability framework, which we just launched last Friday. And it has been audited by PwC for the baseline and reviewed by Sustainalytics in terms of the aggressivity and the program itself, whether it is already in line with the international standard. So we already have that, right? We have all the framework and we are ready to go now. So it's not only showcasing that the Scope 1 program is actually something already in line with the international standard, but it's also showcasing that basically we are utilizing the sustainability-linked financing. So therefore, we can bring this commitment not only to our shareholders, but the whole stakeholders, including our creditors.
Okay, so talking about your transition in using 20%, right, renewable energy, you're a finance man. How efficient is it when it comes to costs to change your energy usage from non-renewable to renewable energy? How many percent or how many $1 million that you can save by using renewable energy?
Okay, so number one, on the thermal substitution rate, yeah, this is the mechanics. You are replacing a refuse-derived fuel or biomass to relatively more expensive energy, which is coal right now. So by our calculations, using the DMO price, let's say, we are consuming around 4,000, in average 4,200 GAR caloric value, which in dollars is actually around $47 FOB price.
Yeah.
And then we are replacing this to a more cheaper in terms of the process and in terms of the acquisition cost for the biomass and refuse-derived fuel. Every 1% increase of TSR, I can efficient my cost around 40 billion rupiah, every 1%. So we are now around 5%. We are going to increase this to 20%, right? So 15% times 40 billion. That's number one, right? Number two, on our clinker, right? Reduction of clinker 1% with FABA, which is a more cheaper substitution material, whereby we don't have to pay actually for the FABA because it's a waste for the power generated provider. So we only pay for the logistic cost. We can save 4,000 rupiah per ton production of cement. That's actually from those two programs. And then on scope 2, in terms of the replacement of our electricity to our solar panel, we can reduce up to 15% of our energy electricity cost.
Wow.
So it's actually quite
That's quite
substantial.
That's
yeah?
quite positive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I've talked with several CEOs before, and they said that it's quite costly to build this renewable energy panel or solar panel in the first place. But when it comes to the daily cost or operational cost, it will be lower. Is that the case with you as well?
Number one, we have the land, right? We have spacious land, yeah, our mining area. We have spacious land whereby it's actually we can utilize, right, for that. So it's actually one of the investment costs, which is quite costly. Number two, we work together with our partners, so we don't invest. So they invest, and then we create a purchase power agreement for the purchasing of the electricity and also the operation and maintenance, right? And we calculate using the, our calculations in terms of the electricity costs, we still can have a reductions of 15%. So it's actually quite efficient way.
Okay. We are now entering this, this is a set of last questions from me, Pak Hosni. What's the future plan of Cement Indonesia Group, let's say in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so the future plan, basically, we're going to focus on decarbonization. So that ESG story that I've told you, right? Number two, as you know, we have two ecosystems which can bring a big value for us. Number one is our logistic ecosystem. As you know, we have a very big coverage in terms of our network of distributions of our logistic. For example, like in Java itself, we cover around more than 3,000 routes and involving around 10,000 of trucks, right, running around the cities in Java. And in some cases, they are going here and there empty. Right? This ecosystem, actually, if we can build and centralize and consolidate, which we already have a plan now, what we call a cargo consolidations, we can co-share this with other products. So therefore, it's not only bringing the logistic cost efficiency, but it also bring a value add in terms of the business itself. And we're going to create cargo consolidations and put a digital platform in that, so we can co-share it with the same handling products.
Okay. Right. Cement is considered as one of the dirtiest industry when it comes to environment, right? So to our international audience, how can you assure that you are changing, you are transforming, and you are committed to decarbonization process and committed to the environment?
Okay, so we have a program, and this program, what we call ESG sustainability framework that we already launched, is actually consists of the two scopes. Yeah? Scope 1, reducing the emission to below the IEA standard, and then Scope 2 in terms of changing part of our electricity consumptions to solar panel. And we've showcased that we are not only putting this in paper, but we are also putting this into our balance sheet, right? That's where the commitment is, because we dare to put a covenant, put a KPI target by reprofiling our part of our loan to become sustainable linked financing. So therefore, our creditor is not only putting a covenant on our financial covenant, but also putting a covenant on our whether we can achieve the KPI target or not. The concept of the sustainable linked financing is that every year they will put an auditor to check whether we achieve the KPI of the carbon emission target or not. If we can achieve, we get a benefit of another reductions on the interest margin. But if we don't achieve, we get a penalty. It's a reputational risk for us, right? And we dare to do that. That's our commitment.
Yeah, and at least you can save up to 15% by transitioning towards renewable energy for your power plant.
For our power plants,
right.
That's right.
Pak Hosni, Finance Director of Cement Indonesia Group, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And that was our discussion with the Finance Director of Cement Indonesia Group. Hopefully you will gain lots of insights and also information from this discussion.